The rifle felt wrong in her hands the moment Instructor Martinez placed it there. Elena Vasquez could sense the warped barrel, the misaligned sight, the loose trigger mechanism that would send any shot wild. But she said nothing, simply nodded, and took her position at the firing line alongside the other recruits. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. This one's been giving us trouble, Martinez muttered, loud enough for the others to hear. His weathered face carried that familiar smirk she'd seen on drill instructors before, the look of someone about to teach a lesson to an overconfident rookie. Figured I'd let our sharpshooter here give it a try. Elena ignored the snickers from her fellow recruits. At 24, she was older than most of them, a former art teacher who'd enlisted after her small Texas town had been devastated by cartel violence. The others saw her quiet demeanor and assumed weakness. They had no idea what she was capable of. The target stood 200 yards downrange, a standard bullseye that had remained untouched all morning, despite dozens of attempts. Martinez had deliberately saved the broken rifle for her, she realized. A petty power play designed to humble the woman who'd scored perfect marks on every written exam and outperformed half the men in physical training. Elena raised the rifle, feeling the weight distribution that confirmed her suspicions. The stock had been subtly shortened, throwing off the balance. The scope had been loosened just enough to make precision impossible. Even the ammunition felt light, probably underpowered rounds that would drop short of the target. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting muscle memory take over. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind from those summers long past. Mia, a rifle is just metal and wood. The shot comes from within. When she opened her eyes, the world had narrowed to a single point of focus. She compensated for every defect she detected, her body making micro-adjustments that seemed to flow from pure instinct. The broken rifle no longer mattered. In her hands, it became an extension of her will. The shot cracked across the range. Like thunder. 200 yards away, the bullet punched through the exact center of the bullseye. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats before Martinez lowered his binoculars, his face draining of color. Around her, the other recruits stared in stunned disbelief. Someone whispered, "Jesus Christ." Elena calmly worked the bolt, ejecting the spent casing. "Would you like me to try again, Instructor?" Martinez nodded numbly, his cockiness evaporating. This time, Elena didn't even pause to aim. The second shot followed the first through the same hole, the target's center completely obliterated. Again, Martinez croaked. The third shot. The fourth. The fifth. Each one found its mark with mechanical precision, turning the bullseye into a ragged crater of shredded paper and cardboard. By the time Elena set the rifle down, word had already begun to spread throughout Camp Pendleton. Within hours, her name would reach the ears of people who specialized in finding individuals with very particular skills. People who understood that some talents couldn't be taught, only awakened. But Elena didn't know that yet. She simply stood at attention, waiting for her next order, unaware that her life had just changed forever. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I want to take a moment to thank you for watching. Creating and narrating these detailed, novel-length stories takes tremendous time and research to bring you the most engaging content possible. We're embarking on a journey of nearly 50,000 words together. That's a full novella. If you're already hooked by what you've heard, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this story with someone who would enjoy it, and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. This is going to be an epic adventure, so get comfortable. And let's continue with this remarkable tale. The mess hall buzzed with nervous energy that evening, but Elena ate her dinner in relative peace. Word traveled fast in military circles, and by now everyone had heard about the impossible shots with the broken rifle. Some recruits whispered theories, family of hunters, secret competition background, beginner's luck stretched to impossible limits. None of them came close to the truth. Elena had learned long ago to deflect attention rather than invite it. When approached, she offered modest explanations about growing up around firearms, hunting with her grandfather, nothing that would raise serious questions. The real story, the one about muscle memory that ran deeper than conscious thought, about skills that seemed to exist in her bones, that story stayed locked away. Vasquez. Instructor Martinez appeared beside her table, his earlier bravado replaced by something approaching respect. Captain Rodriguez wants to see you, now. The walk across base felt longer than it should have. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, none of them particularly comforting. Exceptional performance in basic training could lead to specialized assignments, elite units, or deeper scrutiny she wasn't prepared to handle. The military had ways of digging into backgrounds that civilian employers never bothered with. Captain Rodriguez's office occupied a corner of the administration building, its windows offering a view of the Pacific Ocean in the distance. Rodriguez himself was a compact man in his 40s, his uniform bearing ribbons that spoke of multiple deployments and commendations. But it was the woman seated across from his desk who immediately commanded Elena's attention. "Recruit Vasquez," Rodriguez began. "This is Agent Sarah Chun from the Defense Intelligence Agency. She'd like to ask you some questions about your performance today." Agent Chun was perhaps 35, Asian American, with the kind of controlled stillness that spoke of extensive training. Her civilian clothes were expensive but understated, and her handshake was firm without being aggressive. "Please sit down. This isn't an interrogation, just a conversation." Elena settled into the offered chair, maintaining the relaxed alertness. Her grandfather had taught her, "Never let them see you sweat, Mia. Fear is a scent predators can smell from miles away." "Your performance today was remarkable," Chun continued, consulting a tablet. 5 shots, all through the same hole, using a rifle that had been deliberately damaged. Our armorers confirmed the weapon was essentially unfireable by normal standards. The barrel was warped, the sights were misaligned, and the ammunition was underpowered. Yet you compensated for every defect perfectly. Elena chose her words carefully. "I grew up around firearms, ma'am. My grandfather taught me to shoot when I was young." "Miguel Vasquez," Chun said, reading from her tablet. "Deceased 5 years ago. Former Marine Corps sniper, 2 tours in Vietnam, recipient of the Bronze Star. Is that correct?" The casual mention of details Elena hadn't shared sent a chill down her spine. These people had done their homework quickly and thoroughly. "Yes, ma'am." "Your grandfather had an impressive record," Rodriguez interjected. "But even he would have struggled with what you accomplished today. There are Olympic marksmen who couldn't have made those shots under those conditions." Elena remained silent, waiting for the real question she sensed was coming. Chun leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Vasquez, we're not here to cause you problems. But we need to understand what we witnessed today. Have you ever received professional training beyond what your grandfather provided?" "No, ma'am." "Ever participated in competitive shooting?" "No, ma'am." "Any military experience in your family besides your grandfather?" Elena hesitated for a fraction of a second. "My father served briefly in the army, but he died when I was young." "Car accident." Chun made a note on her tablet. "Ricardo Vasquez. Discharged after 6 months for medical reasons. No combat experience listed in his record." The clinical recitation of her family history felt like a violation, but Elena kept her expression neutral. These people clearly had resources far beyond typical military bureaucracy. "One last question," Chun said, setting down her tablet. "When you fired those shots today, what were you thinking about?" It was an odd question, more personal than professional. Elena considered her answer carefully. "I was thinking about my grandfather. He used to say that a rifle was just metal and wood, that the real shot came from within. And what did he mean by that? That marksmanship isn't just about technique. It's about understanding yourself, your equipment, and your environment. About becoming one with the process. Shun and Rodriguez exchanged a meaningful look. Elena sensed she'd revealed more than she'd intended, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what. "Thank you for your time, Recruit Vasquez," Rodriguez said finally. "You're dismissed. Please don't discuss this conversation with your fellow recruits." "Yes, sir." Elena stood to leave, but Chun's voice stopped her at the door. "Ms. Vasquez, your grandfather sounds like he was a wise man. You should be proud to carry on his legacy." The words carried weight Elena didn't fully understand, but the implication was clear. This conversation was far from over. The barracks felt different when Elena returned. Conversations stopped as she passed, and she could feel eyes tracking her movement. Word of her meeting with the DIA agent would spread by morning, adding another layer to the mystery that was already building around her. She lay on her narrow bunk that night, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the path that had brought her here. Teaching high school art in Laredo had been a quiet life, predictable and safe. Until the day the Hermanos Rojos cartel had decided to make an example of the teacher who'd refused to look the other way when they started recruiting her students. Attack on the school had lasted 12 minutes. 12 minutes of chaos and terror that had shattered everything Elena thought she knew about herself. When the smoke cleared, 3 cartel members lay dead in the hallway outside her classroom, and Elena stood over them with a security guard's pistol in her hands. The official story spoke of heroic defense of students, of remarkable composure. Under fire. The unofficial story, the one that existed only in classified law enforcement reports, spoke of precision shots that defied explanation, of tactical awareness that seemed to come from nowhere, of skills that shouldn't have existed. In a small-town art teacher, Elena had enlisted the next week, driven by a need to understand what had awakened inside her that day. The military had seemed like a place where exceptional marksmanship would be valued rather than questioned. Now she was beginning to suspect she'd made a terrible miscalculation. The next morning brought new challenges. Elena's training schedule had been subtly modified, with additional time allocated for advanced marksmanship training and specialized fitness assessments. Her drill instructors treated her with a new level of attention that bordered on scrutiny, but it was the appearance of Master Sergeant David Kane that truly changed everything. Kane was a legend within special operations circles, though few people knew his name. He'd served with Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and various classified units over a 20-year career. Now he worked as a talent scout, identifying individuals with the rare combination of skills and psychological profile needed for the military's most sensitive operations. He watched Elena from the observation deck as she went through her paces. On the rifle range, using standard equipment this time, every shot found its mark with mechanical precision, grouping so tight they seemed impossible. But Kane wasn't just evaluating her marksmanship, he was studying her body language, her breathing patterns, the way she processed information under pressure. "She's different," he told Agent Chun, who'd remained on base to observe Elena's continued performance. "I've seen talented shooters before, even prodigies. This isn't talent. This is something else entirely." Chun nodded, reviewing her notes from the previous day's interview. "Her psychological profile is interesting too. High intelligence, strong sense of justice, protective instincts, but also compartmentalization abilities that suggest significant trauma processing. The school shooting in Laredo wasn't just a random event, it was a catalyst. Any family history that might explain the skill set? That's where it gets complicated. Her grandfather was indeed a Marine sniper, but his service record, while distinguished, doesn't suggest anything beyond conventional training. Her father's military service was brief and unremarkable. No other family members in law enforcement or military service." Kane lowered his binoculars as Elena finished her course of fire. What about genetic predisposition? Enhanced reaction? Times superior hand-eye coordination? Anything measurable? We'd need more extensive testing to determine that. But David, watch this. Shun pointed as Elena began engaging moving targets, her rifle tracking smoothly as clay pigeons launched. From multiple angles. Each one shattered in perfect sequence, the shots so precisely timed they seemed choreographed. Jesus, Kane breathed. How long has she been shooting? According to her statements, since childhood. But there's no record of competition shooting. No formal training beyond what her grandfather provided. No explanation for this level of skill. Kane made a decision that would alter the trajectory of Elena's military career. I want her transferred to my program. Whatever she is, whatever this ability represents, we need to understand it. And we need to do it before someone else notices what we've noticed. The conversation that would change Elena's life took place. Over lunch in the base commissary, Kane approached her table with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. Mind if I sit down? He asked, though he was already lowering himself into the opposite chair. Elena studied. The stranger tall, lean, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent years in harsh environments. His uniform bore no insignia beyond his rank, but something in his bearing suggested capabilities far beyond those of a typical NCO. Sergeant Kane, he introduced himself. I've been watching your progress here at Pendleton. Impressive work. Thank you, Sergeant. Call me David. I'm not your drill instructor, and we're going to be working together closely if you're interested in what I have to offer. Elena set down her fork, giving Kane her full attention. What kind of work? The kind that makes use of your unique abilities. The kind that goes beyond basic infantry training and gets into more specialized applications. Kane leaned forward. Slightly. Elena, can I call you Elena? What you did yesterday with that broken rifle shouldn't have been possible. We both know that. The question is, what do you want to do about it? The directness of the question caught Elena off guard. Most military personnel dealt in euphemisms and protocols. Kane was laying cards on the table with uncomfortable honesty. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. I'm asking if you want to explore the full extent of your capabilities, or if you'd prefer to spend the next 4 years doing routine infantry work while pretending to be someone you're not. Elena considered the implications. And if I choose to explore these capabilities, then you come work with me. Specialized training, advanced techniques, assignments that actually matter. But it also means leaving the conventional path and entering a world where the rules are different. Different how? Kane glanced around the commissary, ensuring their conversation remained private. Elena, there are things happening in the world that most people never hear about. Threats that can't be addressed through conventional military operations. Sometimes, the right person in the right place at the right time can make all the difference. I think you might be one of those people. The offer was both tantalizing and terrifying. Elena had joined the military seeking structure and purpose, but what Kane was describing sounded like something far more complex and dangerous. What makes you think I'm qualified for whatever you're talking about? Kane smiled, the expression transforming his weathered features. Elena, yesterday you made 5 perfect shots with a rifle that shouldn't have been able to hit the broad side of a barn. Today you set a new base record for precision marksmanship using standard equipment. Tomorrow, with proper training and resources, there's no telling what you might accomplish. Elena felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. The safe path would be to decline, finish basic training, serve her term quietly, and return to civilian life. But the events in Laredo had awakened something inside her that conventional military service might never fully address. If I agreed to this, she said carefully, what would it involve? Training like you've never experienced. Techniques that go beyond anything taught in standard military programs. Equipment designed for precision work. And eventually, Missions where your unique abilities could save lives that can't be saved any other way. The phrase precision work carried implications Elena didn't miss. She was being recruited for something that involved more than target practice and routine military operations. I need time to think about it, Kane nodded, standing to leave. Take all the time you need, but Elena? The world has a way of finding people with your kind of talent, whether they're ready or not. At least this way, you get to choose how that talent gets used. He left a business card on the table, plain white cardstock with only a phone number, and the letters SMU printed in small text. Elena pocketed it without comment, but her mind was already racing through possibilities and consequences. That afternoon brought another surprise, a visit from her bunkmate's sister, who'd driven down from Los Angeles for a weekend visit. Maria Santos was a paralegal at a major law firm, sharp and observant, and she immediately picked up on the tension surrounding Elena. "You've got people talking," Maria said as they walked along the beach after dinner. "My brother says half the base is trying to figure out who you really are." Elena appreciated the directness. "And what do you think?" "I think you're someone who's been hiding something important for a long time, and now it's starting to surface whether you want it to or not." The assessment was uncomfortably accurate. Elena had spent years building a quiet life as a teacher, burying the instincts and abilities that had first manifested during childhood hunting trips with her grandfather. The incident in Laredo had cracked that carefully constructed facade, and her performance at Pendleton was finishing the job. "Sometimes hiding is the safer option," Elena said. "Safer for who? You, or the people who might need what you can do?" It was a question that would haunt Elena through the sleepless hours that followed. By morning, she'd made her decision. She called the number on Kane's card. The facility that Kane brought her to 3 days later bore no resemblance to anything Elena had seen during her time at Pendleton. Located in mountains outside of San Diego, it looked more like a corporate retreat than a military installation. Low-profile buildings were scattered among natural vegetation, their design intended to blend seamlessly with the environment. "Welcome to the ranch," Kane said as their unmarked vehicle passed through the security checkpoint. "This is where we separate the exceptional from the merely talented." Elena studied the landscape, noting details that suggested this place was far more than it appeared. The security measures were subtle but comprehensive: hidden cameras, motion sensors, and personnel positioned at strategic intervals. The corporate retreat was actually a fortress designed to look harmless. How many people know about this place? Need-to-know basis. The people who matter know. Everyone else doesn't need to. Kane parked in front of the main building. "Elena, before we go inside, I need you to understand something. What happens here stays here. The techniques you'll learn, the people you'll meet, the missions you'll eventually undertake, none of it gets discussed with anyone outside this program, ever." The weight of secrecy settled over Elena like a heavy cloak. "What exactly am I signing up for?" "The chance to become who you were meant to be." The interior of the main building contradicted its modest exterior. State-of-the-art technology filled every corner: advanced computer systems, communication equipment, and displays showing what appeared to be real-time intelligence feeds from around the world. Personnel moved through the halls with the quiet efficiency of professionals who understood the stakes of their work. Kane led Elena to a conference room, where 3 people waited around a polished table. She recognized Agent Chun immediately. The other 2 were strangers, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes, and a younger man whose casual posture couldn't hide his obvious military background. "Elena Vasquez," Kane announced. "Meet Colonel Patricia Morrison, retired Army Intelligence, now Deputy Director of Operations. Captain James Rodriguez, former Navy SEAL, currently our Head of Tactical Training. You already know Agent Chun." Elena shook hands with each of them, noting the different ways they assessed her. Morrison with analytical precision, Rodriguez with a warrior's evaluation of potential threat. Chun with the patient observation of someone gathering psychological data. Please sit down, Morrison said, gesturing to an empty chair. We have a lot to discuss. The next hour transformed Elena's understanding of why she'd been brought here. Morrison outlined the existence of threats that couldn't be addressed through conventional military or law enforcement channels, terrorist networks that operated in the shadows, rogue states developing advanced weapon systems, criminal organizations, with resources that rivaled small nations. The world has changed, Morrison explained, and our response capabilities need to change with it. Sometimes the solution to a complex problem is a single person with the right skills in the right place at the right time. Rodriguez leaned forward. Your performance at Pendleton suggests you might have those skills. But suggestion isn't enough. We need to know what you're truly capable of. Chin consulted her tablet. We've designed a comprehensive evaluation program. Physical conditioning, advanced marksmanship, tactical training, psychological assessment, and specialized skills development. It's designed to push you beyond your perceived limitations. And if I don't meet your standards, Elena asked, then you return to conventional military service with a clean record and no hard feelings, Morrison replied. But Elena, based on what we've observed, I don't think that's going to be a problem. The evaluation process began immediately. Elena found herself on a firing range unlike anything she'd experienced, targets at extreme distances, shooting positions that defied conventional wisdom, environmental conditions that seemed designed to make accuracy impossible. Yet with each challenge, something inside her rose to meet it. Shots that should have been beyond her capability found their marks. Techniques she'd never been taught felt natural and instinctive. It was as if her body contained knowledge that her conscious mind had never acquired. Rodriguez watched from the observation booth, making notes on Elena's performance. She's compensating for wind conditions she can't possibly measure accurately, he told Kane. Look at her stance. She's adjusting for the rifle's recoil pattern before she even fires. Natural ability or learned behavior. Kane asked, that's what we need to figure out. The physical conditioning portion of the evaluation pushed Elena through obstacle courses, endurance tests, and combat simulations. Here, too, she performed beyond expectations, her body adapting to challenges with surprising speed. But it was the psychological evaluation that proved most revealing. Dr. Sarah Hoffman was a psychiatrist who specialized in trauma and exceptional human performance. Her sessions with Elena took place in a comfortable office that felt more like a therapist's space than a military facility. Tell me about the school shooting, Hoffman said during their third session. Elena had known this conversation was inevitable, but she still felt her muscles tense. What would you like to know? Start with what you remember from the moment you realized you were in danger. Elena closed her eyes, allowing the memories to surface. I was teaching my advanced placement art class when we heard gunshots in the hallway. 3 men, armed with automatic weapons, moving room by room. What did you do? I locked the classroom door and told my students to hide behind the desks. Then I waited. Waited for what? I'm not sure. I just knew that hiding wasn't going to be enough. Hoffman made notes as Elena continued. The security guard, Officer Martinez, came to check on us. He was wounded, bleeding from his shoulder. The attackers had shot him when he tried to radio for help, and then they started shooting at the door lock. I knew they'd be inside in seconds. Officer Martinez was barely conscious, but he managed to give me his service weapon. Elena paused, the weight of what came next pressing down on her. I'd never fired a handgun before that day, never even held one. But when those men came through, the door ... double quote, what happened, Elena? I killed them. All 3 of them. Precise shots, center mass, exactly like my grandfather had taught me with rifles when I was young. Except this was different. This was ... This was what? This was like I'd been preparing for that moment my entire life without knowing it. Hoffman leaned forward. Elena, you mentioned that you'd never fired a handgun before. How do you explain the accuracy of your shots? I can't. That's what's been haunting me ever since. I should have been terrified, shaking, unable to aim properly. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The sessions with Dr. Hoffman continued over the following weeks, each one peeling back another layer of Elena's psychological makeup. Gradually, a picture emerged of someone whose conscious mind had suppressed capabilities that emerged only under extreme stress. Your grandfather's training was more comprehensive than you realized, Hoffman concluded after reviewing Elena's complete psychological profile. But more than that, you have what we call stress inoculation, the ability to maintain peak performance under pressure that would incapacitate most people. Kane reviewed the evaluation results with growing excitement. Elena's scores were beyond exceptional, they were unprecedented. Her marksmanship abilities placed her in the top fraction of 1% of all military personnel. Her physical conditioning ranked with elite special operations troops, despite having no formal training. Her psychological profile suggested someone capable of maintaining focus and making complex decisions under extreme stress, but it was her performance on the final evaluation that truly set her apart. The test was designed to be impossible. Targets at 800 yards in shifting wind conditions, using a rifle she'd never fired before, with ammunition of unknown ballistic characteristics. Elena was given one shot at each of 10 targets, with no opportunity for ranging shots or adjustments. She placed all 10 shots in the center ring. That's not humanly possible, Rodriguez muttered. Studying the targets through high-powered binoculars, Kane lowered his own binoculars, his face grim with realization. That's what I'm afraid of. The conversation that followed took place in Morrison's office, with only the core team present. Elena wasn't invited. The discussion centered on what to do with someone whose abilities seemed to transcend normal human limitations. The question, Morrison said, is whether we're looking at exceptional training, genetic predisposition, or something else entirely. Shun consulted her research files. I've been digging deeper into her family history. Miguel Vasquez, her grandfather, had an exemplary record as a Marine sniper, but nothing that would explain this level of ability in his granddaughter. However, there are some interesting gaps in his service record. What kind of gaps? 6 months of his second tour in Vietnam are classified at a level that prevents me from accessing the details. Given the time period and his skill set, it's possible he was involved in operations that were never officially acknowledged. Rodriguez considered the implications. You think he might have received training that was passed down to Elena? It's possible. Or there could be genetic factors we don't understand. Enhanced nervous system function, superior hand-eye coordination, processing speeds that exceed normal human parameters. Kane had remained silent throughout the discussion, but now he spoke up. Does it matter how she acquired these abilities? The fact is, she has them. The question is what we do about it. Morrison nodded. David's right. Elena represents an asset unlike anything we've ever encountered. The question is whether we can successfully integrate her into operational activities. There's another consideration, Chun added. Elena's psychological profile suggests she has strong moral convictions and protective instincts. She's not going to be suitable for certain types of missions. Which missions? Kane asked. Anything that involves collateral damage or morally ambiguous objectives. Her motivation for joining the military was to protect people, not to compromise her principles. For strategic advantage. Morrison weighed the options. Then we design missions that align with her psychological profile. There are plenty of threats in the world that represent clear moral choices. Elena doesn't need to become someone she's not. She just needs to become the best version of who she already is. The decision to move Elena into active operations was made that afternoon. But first, she would need to complete specialized training that would prepare her for the realities of the world she was entering. Kane delivered the news personally, finding Elena in the facility's library where she'd been reading about advanced ballistics theory. "Congratulations," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "You've passed every evaluation with scores that frankly have everyone a little stunned." Elena set down her book. "What happens now?" "Now the real training begins. Advanced tactical skills, intelligence gathering, mission planning, survival techniques. Everything you'll need to operate independently in hostile environments." "And after the training?" Kane's expression grew serious. "After the training, you become operational. Real missions, real stakes, real consequences. Are you ready for that?" Elena considered the question carefully. The path she was choosing would take her far from the quiet life she'd once known, into a world where her decisions could mean the difference between life and death for people she'd never meet. "Yes," she said finally, "I'm ready." But even as she spoke the words, neither she nor Kane could have predicted the challenges that lay ahead, or the way her first mission would force her to confront the true extent of her abilities. We're deep into this incredible story now, and I hope you're as captivated as I am by these unfolding events. The amount of effort that goes into researching, writing, and narrating these novel-length stories is immense. We're talking about creating content equivalent to a published book. But it's worth it to bring these stories that truly engage and transport you to another world. If you're enjoying this journey so far, please take a second to like this video and share it with friends who appreciate great storytelling. Your support means everything and helps us continue creating these detailed, epic narratives. We still have so much more to discover together. So let's see how this situation unfolds. The specialized training program that Elena entered made her previous military experience seem like summer camp. Each day brought new challenges designed to push her capabilities beyond known limits, while simultaneously preparing her for operational realities that existed in the gray areas between conventional warfare and civilian law enforcement. Her days began before dawn with physical conditioning that would have broken most special operations candidates. Dr. Martinez, the facility's exercise physiologist, had designed a program specifically for Elena based on her evaluation results. The goal wasn't just physical fitness. It was optimization of the neurological pathways that connected her conscious mind to her exceptional abilities. "Your body is already performing beyond normal parameters," Martinez explained as Elena completed an obstacle course that included precision shooting at multiple distances while maintaining a heart rate above 160 beats per minute. "What we're doing is training your conscious mind to stay out of the way when your instincts take over." Elena paused at the final shooting station, her breathing controlled despite having just completed a grueling physical sequence. The targets were positioned at varying distances and angles, some partially concealed, others moving in unpredictable patterns. She had 30 seconds to engage all 12 targets with a handgun. Her first shot dropped a spinning target at 50 yards. The second and third eliminated threats positioned behind partial cover. By the time the buzzer sounded, all 12 targets were down, each marked by precise center mass hits. "Time," Rodriguez called from the observation booth. 12 for 12 in 28 seconds. "Elena, you just set another course record." But Rodriguez's congratulations carried an undercurrent of concern that Elena was beginning to recognize. Her performance consistently exceeded the parameters of their testing equipment, forcing the instructors to constantly redesign challenges to match her growing capabilities. The afternoon sessions focused on tactical skills that went far beyond marksmanship, urban combat techniques, surveillance and counter-surveillance, intelligence gathering, and infiltration methods. Elena absorbed each new skill set with the same intuitive grasp that characterized her. Shooting abilities. It was during the course on advanced surveillance techniques that Elena first encountered Agent Marcus Webb, a veteran intelligence operative who would become both mentor and complication in her rapidly evolving career. Webb was perhaps 45, with the kind of nondescript appearance that made him forgettable in crowds, exactly the quality that had made him successful in a career spanning 20 years of covert operations. He watched Elena from the back of the classroom as she demonstrated an uncanny ability to track multiple subjects through urban environments while remaining invisible herself. "She's not just talented," Webb told Kane during a break in the training. "She's operating on a level of situational awareness that typically takes years to develop." Where did she learn counter-surveillance techniques? Kane reviewed Elena's training logs on his tablet. She didn't. "We introduced the concepts yesterday, and she's already implementing them like she's been doing this work for years." "That's not normal, David. Nothing about Elena is normal. The question is whether that's an asset or a liability." Webb's concern proved prophetic when Elena's first field exercise went sideways in ways that exposed both her capabilities and her limitations. The scenario was designed to be straightforward: infiltrate a hostile facility, gather intelligence on suspected weapons trafficking, and extract without detection. The facility was actually an abandoned warehouse complex outside San Diego, populated with role players and monitored by instructors. Elena approached the mission with the methodical precision that had characterized all her training. She conducted reconnaissance from multiple positions, identified guard patterns and security vulnerabilities, and planned an infiltration route that would minimize exposure to detection. But something about the exercise felt wrong from the moment she crossed the perimeter. The guard patterns were too predictable. The security cameras were positioned in ways that created obvious blind spots. The entire setup felt like a trap designed to test something other than her infiltration skills. Elena's instincts screamed warnings that her conscious mind couldn't articulate, but she pressed forward with the mission parameters. She reached the target building without incident, accessed the specified intelligence materials, and began her extraction. That's when the real scenario began. Unknown to Elena, the exercise had been modified at the last minute. Instead of role players, the facility now contained a team of elite operatives whose job was to capture her using live ammunition and real consequences. The modification was Kane's idea, a way to test Elena's performance under genuine life-or-death pressure. The first indication that something had changed came when Elena detected movement patterns that didn't match the briefed exercise parameters. The guards were now exhibiting tactical awareness and coordination that suggested special operations. Training. Elena's training took over before her conscious mind fully processed the threat. She melted into the shadows between buildings, her movements becoming fluid and instinctive. The warehouse complex transformed from a training facility into a battlefield where her survival depended on skills she was still discovering she possessed. The engagement that followed lasted 17 minutes and became legendary within the intelligence community. Elena neutralized 7 highly trained operatives, using nothing but her sidearm and environmental weapons, moving through the complex like a ghost who could predict every tactical decision before her opponents made them. The first operative went down when Elena used a ricochet shot off a steel beam to hit him from an impossible angle. The second and third fell to precision fire that seemed to bend around cover. By the time the remaining team realized they were facing something unprecedented, Elena had already repositioned twice and eliminated their communications. From the observation post, Kane watched in stunned silence as Elena systematically dismantled a team that should have overwhelmed a single operative. "She's not just reacting to their movements," he told Webb, who was monitoring radio traffic. "She's anticipating them. It's like she can see their tactical decisions before they make them." The final operator attempted to reach a panic button that would end the exercise and bring in extraction teams. Elena's shot took out the device in an instant, before his finger reached it, the bullet threading through a gap in the machinery that was barely wider than the projectile itself. When the exercise finally ended, Elena emerged from the complex uninjured and seemingly unshaken. The 7 operatives who had hunted her were all incapacitated, but alive. Elena had made precise shots that neutralized without killing, demonstrating a level of control that defied belief. "Jesus Christ," Webb breathed as he reviewed the footage. "David, what the hell have you found?" The debriefing session that followed was unlike anything in the facility's history. Elena sat calmly at a conference table surrounded by instructors and analysts, all of whom were struggling to process what they'd witnessed. "Elena," Morrison began, "can you walk us through your tactical decision-making during the engagement?" Elena considered the question carefully. The guard patterns changed approximately 4 minutes into the exercise. The new movement signatures suggested special operations training rather than civilian role players. I adapted my approach accordingly. "How did you identify the change in personnel?" Rodriguez asked. "The way they moved, their positioning choices, the angles they chose for observation. Everything about their behavior suggested active tactical training rather than scripted responses." Kane leaned forward. "Elena, at what point did you realize this wasn't a standard training exercise?" "When the first operative tried to flank me, using a route that wasn't included in the facility blueprints we reviewed. That suggested either real-time tactical adaptation or knowledge of the complex that exceeded the briefing materials." The clinical precision of Elena's analysis was almost as unsettling as her performance during the engagement. She had processed complex tactical information in real time while under lethal threat, making decisions that saved her life while preserving the lives of her opponents. "One more question," Sean interjected. "How did you make that final shot, the one that disabled the panic button?" "The angle was mathematically impossible." Elena paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features for the first time. "I'm not sure. I saw the target, calculated the shot, and fired. The physics worked out somehow." The somehow in Elena's explanation became the focus of intense analysis over the following days. Ballistics experts examined the final shot from every angle, trying to understand how a bullet could have traveled the trajectory Elena had achieved. The consensus was that it should have been impossible, yet video evidence confirmed what had happened. Dr. Hoffman's psychological evaluation after the exercise revealed another troubling development. Elena's brain scans showed activity patterns that didn't match baseline human responses to stress. Instead of the elevated cortisol and adrenaline levels expected after a life-threatening situation, her neurochemistry had remained remarkably stable throughout the engagement. "It's as if her nervous system is optimized for combat situations," Hoffman explained to the review board. "Most people experience performance degradation under extreme stress. Elena experiences performance enhancement." The implications were staggering. If Elena's abilities were genetic rather than learned, it raised questions about human potential that the scientific community wasn't prepared to address. If they were learned, it suggested training methodologies that had been lost or hidden from conventional military doctrine, but it was Agent Webb who identified the most pressing concern. "We need to consider the possibility that Elena isn't unique," he told Kane during a private conversation. "If there are others with similar abilities, and they're working for hostile forces, we could be facing threats we're not prepared to counter." Kane had been thinking along similar lines. "What do you recommend?" "We need to understand the source of Elena's abilities, and we need to do it before someone else figures out what we've got here." The investigation into Elena's background that followed was exhaustive and disturbing. Chun's team dug deeper into her family history, her grandfather's classified military service, and the circumstances surrounding the school shooting in Laredo. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about Elena's past. Miguel Vasquez's classified service record, when finally accessed through back channels, revealed his participation in a covert program during the Vietnam War. Operation Prometheus had been designed to identify and train individuals with exceptional combat abilities, using techniques that pushed human performance beyond recognized limitations. The program had been shut down in 1971 after achieving results that military leadership deemed too dangerous to continue. Participants had demonstrated capabilities that seemed to transcend normal human parameters, but at psychological costs that proved devastating. Most of the operatives involved had either died in combat or suffered complete mental breakdowns within months of completing the program. Miguel Vasquez had been one of only 3 participants who'd maintained psychological stability after the program ended. His post-war life had been carefully monitored by military intelligence, but he'd shown no signs of the instability that had affected the other participants. The question, Chun told the review board, is whether Miguel passed something to Elena through training, or whether there's a genetic component that made him suitable for the program in the first place. Elena's father's military service record provided another piece of the puzzle. Ricardo Vasquez had been medically discharged not for physical injuries, but for psychological evaluations that suggested he possessed capabilities similar to his father's, but lacked the mental stability to employ them safely. It's possible, Dr. Hoffman theorized, that we're looking at inherited traits that skip generations or require specific environmental triggers to manifest. The revelation about her family's hidden history was presented to Elena during what she'd been told would be a routine debriefing session. Instead, she found herself facing a room full of analysts and psychologists who looked at her with a mixture of fascination and concern. "Elena," Morrison began, "we need to discuss some information we've uncovered about your grandfather's military service." The next hour shattered Elena's understanding of her own past. The kindly grandfather who'd taught her to hunt and shoot had been part of a classified program that had pushed human capabilities into uncharted territory. The skills she'd thought were simple marksmanship lessons had been techniques developed through research that had been deemed too dangerous to continue. "So what does this mean?" Elena asked when the briefing concluded. "Am I some kind of experiment?" "You're not an experiment," Kane assured her. "But you may be the product of one. The question is what we do with that information." Elena felt the weight of revelation settling over her like a shroud. Everything she'd believed about herself, her abilities, and her family had been transformed in the space of an hour. The quiet life she'd built as a teacher, the decision to enlist, even her exceptional performance at the ranch, all of it now seemed like the inevitable unfolding of a design she'd never known existed. "What are my options?" she asked finally. Morrison leaned forward. "That depends on what you want to do. We can help you transition back to civilian life with a clean record and no questions asked. Or you can continue with the program, understanding now what you're truly capable of. And if I continue, then you become operational. Real missions, real stakes, real opportunities to use your abilities to protect people who can't protect themselves." Elena thought about the students she'd saved in Laredo, about the sense of purpose that had driven her to enlist, about the possibility that her grandfather's legacy could be used to prevent others from experiencing the kind of violence that had shattered her quiet life. "I'll continue," she said, "but I want to understand everything. No more secrets about what I am or where these abilities come from." Kane nodded. "Fair enough. But Elena, you need to understand that once you cross this line, there's no going back. The missions we're talking about will change you in ways you can't predict. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "I stopped being ready for things the day those men walked into my classroom. But I learned that day that being ready isn't a requirement for doing what needs to be done." The decision to make Elena operational was approved by the highest levels of the intelligence community. But her first real mission would test not just her abilities, but her moral compass in ways that no training scenario could prepare her for. 3 weeks later, Elena found herself on a rooftop in Prague, watching an arms dealer who sold weapons to terrorist organizations around the world. Viktor Kozlov was responsible for supplying the explosives that had been used in a series of attacks across Europe, killing hundreds of innocent people. Elena's mission was simple: eliminate Kozlov and recover intelligence that would prevent future attacks. The target would be eliminated from extreme range, using skills that few people on Earth possessed. But as Elena watched Kozlov through her scope, she saw something that complicated everything. A young girl, perhaps 8 years old, who appeared to be Kozlov's daughter. The child stayed close to her father as he conducted his business, oblivious to the nature of his work, but clearly loving him despite his crimes. Elena found herself faced with a shot that would accomplish her mission but potentially traumatize an innocent child for life. The dilemma represented everything Elena had struggled with since learning about her grandfather's hidden past. Her abilities were designed for precision elimination of threats, but the real world rarely offered clear moral choices. Sometimes protecting innocent lives meant making decisions that carried costs she wasn't prepared to calculate. Elena adjusted her position, waiting for an opportunity that would allow her to complete the mission without the child witnessing her father's death. But as the hours passed, it became clear that Kozlov had no intention of leaving his daughter's side. The encrypted radio in Elena's ear crackled with Webb's voice. "Phoenix, this is Control. Time window is closing. Execute immediately." Phoenix, her operational call sign, chosen for her ability to rise from seemingly impossible situations. Elena sighted through her scope, her crosshairs centered on Kozlov's chest. One shot would end a career of arms dealing that had fueled terrorism across 3 continents, but the little girl chose that moment to look up at her father with obvious adoration, and Elena found herself unable to pull the trigger. "Control, this is Phoenix," she whispered into her radio. "I have a complication." "Phoenix, there are no complications. Execute the target." Elena watched as Kozlov lifted his daughter onto his shoulders, the child laughing with pure joy. The arms dealer was undoubtedly a monster who deserved to die for his crimes. But in that moment, he was also a father sharing a tender moment with his child. "Control, I'm repositioning for a cleaner shot." "Phoenix, you are ordered to execute immediately. The target security detail is converging on your position." Elena could see the security team moving through the streets below, their coordinated movements suggesting they'd detected her presence. In minutes, her position would be compromised and the mission would fail. She had seconds to make a decision that would define not just her future, but her understanding of what it meant to use her abilities in service of something larger than herself. Elena took a deep breath, centered her crosshairs, and made a choice that would haunt her for years to come. The shot that Elena took in Prague changed everything, though the full implications wouldn't become clear until much later. Instead of eliminating Viktor Kozlov, she'd chosen to wound him, a precise shot through the shoulder that incapacitated him without killing him, allowing for capture and interrogation while preserving his daughter's innocence. The decision saved valuable intelligence and prevented psychological trauma to an 8-year-old child. It also marked Elena as someone whose moral compass might conflict with the harsh realities of covert operations. The extraction from Prague had been flawless. Elena had escaped Kozlov's security team and reached the safe house without detection. Kozlov survived his wound and provided information under interrogation that led to the disruption of 3 major arms trafficking networks. By any reasonable measure, the mission had been a complete success, but Agent Webb's debriefing revealed deep concerns about Elena's operational decision-making. "She's too human," Webb told Kane during a secure video conference from Prague. "In the field, there are times when clean moral choices don't exist. Elena's psychological profile suggests you consistently choose the option that minimizes immediate harm, even if it compromises strategic objectives. Kane reviewed Elena's mission report on his tablet. The mission succeeded, Marcus. Kozlov is in custody, we have actionable intelligence, and Elena extracted without compromise. This time. But what happens when she faces a scenario where there is no clean option? When saving one innocent life means allowing 100 others to die? The question would prove prophetic sooner than anyone expected. Elena's return to the ranch was met with congratulations from most of the training staff. But she could sense an undercurrent of evaluation in every interaction. Her performance had been exceptional by most standards, but it had also revealed limitations that concerned her handlers. Dr. Hoffman's post-mission psychological evaluation focused heavily on Elena's decision-making process during the critical moment in Prague. Tell me about the moment you decided not to take the kill shot, Hoffman said during their session. Elena had replayed the scenario countless times in her mind. The tactical situation was clear. I had a clean shot, positive target identification, and sufficient time to execute. But eliminating the target in front of his daughter would have created secondary trauma that wasn't necessary to accomplish the mission objectives. Hoffman made notes on her tablet. So you made a tactical decision based on minimizing collateral psychological damage? I made a human decision based on protecting an innocent child from unnecessary trauma. The distinction was important, Elena realized. Her handlers wanted to frame her choice in tactical terms, as a calculated decision based on mission parameters. But the reality was more complex. Elena had acted on moral instincts that transcended tactical considerations. Elena, Hoffman continued, what if the tactical situation hadn't allowed for a wounding shot? What if the only way to stop Kozlov from escaping had been a kill shot with his daughter present? Elena considered the hypothetical scenario carefully. I would have found another way, and if there was no other way? There's always another way. Hoffman's expression suggested she found Elena's confidence troubling rather than reassuring. Elena, there may come a time when your options are limited to choices you find morally unacceptable. How do you prepare for that possibility? It was a question that Elena couldn't answer satisfactorily, and she sensed that her inability to provide the expected response was being noted and evaluated. The real test of Elena's resolve came 3 weeks later, when intelligence intercepts revealed a plot that would force her to confront the limitations of her moral framework in the starkest possible terms. Dr. Hassan Nazari was a nuclear physicist who had been secretly developing radiological dispersal devices for a terrorist organization known as the Crimson Hand. Intelligence sources confirmed that Nazari was on the verge of completing a dirty bomb that would contaminate large portions of Washington, D.C., potentially killing thousands and displacing hundreds of thousands more. The mission parameters were unambiguous. Eliminate Nazari before he could complete the device or transfer the technology to his handlers. Unlike the Prague operation, this assignment offered no possibility of capture or interrogation. Nazari was under constant surveillance by his terrorist contacts, and any approach except a long-range elimination would result in his immediate execution and the loss of all intelligence regarding the weapon. Elena studied the intelligence package in her quarters, memorizing every detail of Nazari's routine and security arrangements. The physicist lived in a compound outside Tehran, surrounded by guards and protected by counter-surveillance measures that made infiltration impossible. But Nazari had one vulnerability. Every evening at sunset, he climbed to the roof of his laboratory to observe the sky through a high-powered telescope. For exactly 12 minutes, he would be exposed to long-range fire from a position Elena could reach. The complication was that Nazari's 12-year-old nephew often joined him for these observations. The boy was fascinated by astronomy and considered his uncle a hero for his work in advanced physics. The child had no knowledge of his uncle's true activities, But his presence during the assassination window would make him a witness to his uncle's violent death. Webb briefed Elena personally, his expression grim as he outlined the mission parameters. Phoenix, this is a time-critical operation. Nazari will complete the weapon within 72 hours. After that, it becomes exponentially more difficult to prevent deployment. Your window is tomorrow evening's observation session. Elena studied the surveillance photos showing Nazari and his nephew on the rooftop. What's the probability that the boy will be present? Based on pattern analysis, approximately 80%. Elena, I need you to understand something. This isn't Prague. There is no alternative approach, no possibility of wounding shots or creative solutions. Nazari must be eliminated tomorrow, regardless of who else is present. The weight of the ultimatum settled over Elena like a crushing burden. Everything about the mission ran counter to her moral instincts, but the alternative was a radiological attack that would dwarf any harm that might come to one innocent boy. Elena spent the night in meditation, trying to reconcile her training with her conscience. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Mia, sometimes the world asks us to carry burdens that seem impossible. The measure of a person is not whether they avoid these burdens, but how they carry them. By morning, Elena had made her decision. The infiltration into Iran was flawless, using the route and identity that Webb's team had established months earlier. Elena reached her firing position, abandoned, building 3/4 of a mile from Nazari's compound with 6 hours to spare. Before the evening observation session, she used the time to conduct final reconnaissance and prepare her equipment. The shot would be at extreme range, complicated by atmospheric conditions and the need for perfect timing. Elena would have one opportunity, and failure would likely result in the successful deployment of a radiological weapon against American civilians. As sunset approached, Elena settled into her final firing position. Through her scope, she could see Nazari's laboratory building, its rooftop clearly visible despite the distance. Her rifle was a custom-built .338 Lapua Magnum, designed for extreme long-range precision. Every variable had been calculated and compensated for wind speed, air density, the Earth's rotation, even the building's thermal expansion. At exactly 7:47 p.m. local time, Hassan Nazari emerged onto the rooftop carrying his telescope. Elena centered her crosshairs on his chest, her breathing controlled and steady. The physicist began setting up his equipment, oblivious to the fact that his life was measured in seconds. Then the door to the rooftop opened again, and 12-year-old Ahmad Nazari ran to join his uncle, his face bright with excitement about the evening's astronomical observations. Elena watched through her scope as Nazari lifted his nephew to look through the telescope, the boy's delight obvious even at 3/4 of a mile distance. The physicist pointed toward various constellations, sharing knowledge that had nothing to do with weapons or terrorism. Phoenix, this is Control. Webb's voice crackled through her earpiece. Execute immediately. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger, her crosshair centered perfectly on Nazari's chest. One shot would end the threat and save thousands of lives in Washington, D.C., but it would also traumatize an innocent boy whose world would be shattered in the most violent way possible. Phoenix, you are cleared to execute. Take the shot. Elena adjusted her aim slightly, compensating for a subtle wind shift. Through her scope, she could see Ahmad pointing excitedly at something in the night sky, his uncle following the boy's gaze with obvious affection. The moment crystallized into perfect clarity. Elena had the shot, the target was confirmed, and the mission parameters were clear. Everything depended on her willingness to pull the trigger. But as her finger began to apply pressure, Elena made a discovery that changed everything. Through her scope, she noticed something that the intelligence briefings had missed. Ahmad wasn't just visiting his uncle for astronomical observations. The boy was taking notes in a small journal, and the angle of his writing suggested he was recording technical information rather than casual observations. Elena increased the magnification on her scope, studying the interaction between uncle and nephew more carefully. What she'd initially interpreted as innocent stargazing was actually something more complex. Nazari was teaching his nephew advanced physics concepts using astronomical observations as examples. The realization hit Elena like a physical blow. Ahmad wasn't just an innocent bystander, he was being groomed as his uncle's successor. The 12-year-old boy who loved astronomy was being systematically educated in the principles he would need to continue his uncle's work. The moral calculus shifted in an instant. Eliminating Nazari while sparing his nephew wouldn't prevent the completion of the radiological weapon. It would simply delay it until Ahmad was old enough to finish what his uncle had started. Elena found herself facing a choice that transcended every moral framework she'd ever known. Save one innocent child and allow the murder of thousands, or eliminate both targets and prevent a catastrophic terrorist attack. Phoenix, mission window is closing. Execute immediately. Elena's crosshairs moved between uncle and nephew, her mind racing through implications and alternatives. Everything about her training, her moral code, and her understanding of herself as a protector of innocence screamed against what logic demanded. But as she watched Ahmad record another technical notation in his journal, Elena realized that innocence itself might be an illusion. The boy's love for his uncle was real, but it was being systematically corrupted by knowledge that would make him complicit in mass murder. Elena made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The first shot took Hassan Nazari through the heart, dropping him instantly. Ahmad spun toward his uncle's body, his young face transforming from joy to horror in the space of a heartbeat. Elena's second shot was fired before her conscious mind could intervene, her training and tactical analysis overriding moral hesitation. Ahmad Nazari collapsed beside his uncle, the journal of technical notes falling from his lifeless fingers. The rooftop fell silent except for the sound of evening wind through the telescope's mounting. Phoenix, this is Control. Confirm target elimination. Elena lowered her rifle, her hands trembling for the first time since she'd learned to shoot. Control, this is Phoenix. Both targets are down. Mission complete. The words felt like ash in her mouth, but the tactical reality was undeniable. The radiological weapon would never be completed, and thousands of lives in Washington, D.C. had been saved. Elena's extraction from Iran was completed without incident, but the return journey felt like a descent into a darker version of herself. She'd crossed a line that she'd never imagined crossing, and the weight of that crossing would fundamentally alter her relationship with her abilities and her mission. The debriefing session at the ranch was conducted by Webb personally, his expression unreadable as he reviewed Elena's mission report. Phoenix, walk me through your tactical decision-making during the final engagement. Elena had rehearsed this conversation during the long flight home, but the words still felt foreign when she spoke them. Target 1 was eliminated as planned. Target 2 was determined to be a security threat that required immediate neutralization. Explain your assessment of Target 2 as a security threat. Subject 2 was being systematically educated in technical knowledge necessary to continue Target 1's work. Elimination of Target 1 alone would have delayed but not prevented completion of the weapon. Webb made notes on his tablet, his clinical detachment helping Elena maintain her professional composure. And you made this assessment in real time? Affirmative. The tactical situation required immediate adaptation to prevent mission failure. The lie came too easily. Elena had made a split-second decision based on training that had been designed to override moral hesitation. But calling it a tactical assessment made it sound reasoned and calculated rather than desperate and reactive. Phoenix, you understand that your actions prevented a radiological attack on American soil? I understand. And you're prepared to Accept similar tactical responsibilities in future operations? The question hung in the air between them, carrying implications that extended far beyond any single mission. Webb was asking whether Elena had fully transformed from a teacher who'd protected her students into an operative who could eliminate children when tactical necessity demanded it. Elena met his gaze steadily. "I'm prepared to do whatever is necessary to protect innocent lives." It was the answer Webb wanted to hear, but Elena knew it was both true and false simultaneously. She was prepared to make impossible choices, but each choice would extract a price that might eventually leave nothing of the person she'd once been. Webb dismissed her with congratulations on a successful mission, but Elena sensed that something fundamental had changed in how her handlers viewed her capabilities. She'd proven that her moral limitations could be overcome when stakes were high enough, which made her significantly more valuable as an operational asset. But Elena had also learned something about herself that she wasn't sure she could live with. When forced to choose between her conscience and her mission, she would choose the mission. The realization followed her through the weeks that followed, coloring every interaction and training session with questions about what she was becoming. Dr. Hoffman's psychological evaluations grew more frequent and intensive, but Elena had learned to provide the responses that would keep her operational rather than reveal the doubts that were consuming her. 3 months after Tehran, Elena received orders for a mission that would force her to confront the ultimate implications of her transformation. An assignment that would require her to use her abilities against other Americans. The intelligence briefing that would forever change Elena's understanding of her role began with satellite imagery of a compound in rural Montana. From above, it looked like any other ranch: sprawling buildings, agricultural equipment, and isolated terrain that provided natural privacy. But intelligence analysts had identified it as the headquarters of a domestic terrorist organization, planning an attack that would dwarf Oklahoma City. "The Sovereign Patriots," Webb explained, his voice carrying the weight of months of investigation. "Led by Colonel James Morrison." Yes, that Morrison, Patricia's younger brother. "He's been radicalized since leaving the military and has convinced 36 former Special Operations personnel to join his cause." Elena studied the personnel files, recognizing several names from her research into elite military units. These weren't amateur extremists, they were highly trained professionals with access to advanced weapons and explosive expertise. "What's their target?" Elena asked, though she dreaded the answer. Kane activated a projection showing the federal building in Denver, the FBI regional headquarters. Morrison believes federal law enforcement agencies are tools of a corrupt government that needs to be overthrown. He's planning to use a truck bomb containing over 2 tons of military-grade explosives during peak business hours. The estimated casualties were staggering: over 800 federal employees, plus an unknown number of civilians in surrounding buildings. The psychological impact would be catastrophic, potentially triggering a wave of domestic terrorism that could destabilize the entire country. "What's our approach?" Elena asked, though part of her already knew what they would ask of her. Webb brought up detailed surveillance photos of the compound. "The Patriots have established overlapping fields of fire, electronic surveillance, and counterintelligence protocols that make conventional assault impossible. They're expecting federal intervention and have prepared accordingly." Kane leaned forward. "Phoenix, these are American citizens, many of them veterans who serve with distinction. But they've chosen to wage war against their own country. Your mission is to eliminate Morrison and his key lieutenants before they can deploy the truck bomb." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "You're asking me to kill American soldiers." "I'm asking you to stop American terrorists," Kane corrected. "Phoenix, these men have made their choice. The question is whether you can make yours." The mission parameters were stark in their implications. Elena would infiltrate the compound during Morrison's daily briefings, when all the key leadership would be gathered in a single location. She would have one opportunity to eliminate 7 targets before their security protocols could respond. Timeline? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. 72 hours. Intelligence suggests the truck bomb will be deployed this weekend during the Denver Federal Building's annual open house for families. Maximum civilian casualties. Elena spent the next 3 days in intensive preparation, studying personnel, files, compound layouts, and tactical assessments. But no amount of preparation could address the fundamental challenge she faced. These weren't foreign terrorists or arms dealers. They were American veterans who'd served their country with distinction before losing their way. The psychological profiles made it worse. Morrison had earned 3 Bronze Stars and a Silver Star during tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. His second-in-command, Sergeant Major Thompson, had saved dozens of lives during a Taliban ambush in Kandahar. These were heroes who'd been broken by their service and corrupted by extremist ideology. Dr. Hoffman's final psychological evaluation before the mission focused on Elena's mental state as she prepared to potentially kill fellow Americans. How? Are you processing the mission parameters? Hoffman asked. Elena had practiced this conversation, knowing that any expression of doubt could result in her removal from the operation. I understand that these individuals have chosen to wage war against innocent civilians. My personal feelings about their service record are irrelevant to the tactical necessity of stopping them. And if you encounter them face to face, if you have to look them in the eyes before eliminating them, then I'll remember the 800 people who will die if I don't. Hoffman made notes on her tablet. Elena, I need to ask you directly, are you prepared to kill American citizens in service of this mission? The question crystallized everything Elena had been struggling with since Tehran. Each mission had pushed her further from the person she'd once been, each tactical decision carving away pieces of her moral foundation. But the alternative was allowing innocent people to die for the sake of preserving her conscience. Yes, Elena said finally. I'm prepared to do whatever is necessary. The infiltration of Morrison's compound was the most technically challenging operation Elena had ever attempted. The Patriots had established security protocols that rivaled military installations, with overlapping sensor networks and patrol patterns designed by people who understood how infiltration worked. Elena approached during a moonless night, using natural terrain features to avoid detection sensors. Her route took her through 3 miles of wilderness, then across open ground where any mistake would trigger immediate response from heavily armed defenders. But as she reached the compound's perimeter, Elena discovered something that changed the entire tactical picture. The Patriots weren't just planning an attack on the Denver Federal Building. They were planning something much worse. Through electronic surveillance equipment, Elena intercepted communications revealing a coordinated series of attacks across 6 major cities. The truck bomb in Denver was merely the opening shot in a campaign designed to trigger nationwide martial law and civil conflict. The realization that hundreds of thousands of lives hung in the balance steeled Elena's resolve as she approached the main building where Morrison conducted his evening briefings. But as she reached the final approach to her shooting position, she encountered an obstacle she hadn't anticipated. A young woman, perhaps 25, sat on the porch of the main building, reading a book under a small lamp. Elena recognized her from intelligence photos as Sarah Morrison, the colonel's daughter, a graduate student in psychology who had no involvement in her father's extremist activities. Sarah represented everything Elena had struggled with throughout her operational career, an innocent person whose presence complicated an otherwise clear tactical situation. But unlike previous missions, there was no way to wait for a better opportunity. Morrison's briefing would begin in 10 minutes, and this was Elena's only chance to prevent the coordinated attacks. Elena settled into her final shooting position, her rifle trained on the building's main conference room. Through thermal imaging, she could see Morrison and his lieutenants gathering for their briefing. 7 targets, 7 shots, all within a window of perhaps 30 seconds before security protocols would activate. But Sarah Morrison remained on the porch, directly in Elena's line of escape. Any shots fired from Elena's position would likely draw return fire that could endanger the young woman, who had no knowledge of her father's plans. "Phoenix, this is Control," Webb's voice whispered through her earpiece. "Briefing is beginning. Execute immediately." Elena adjusted her scope, centering her crosshairs on Morrison's chest. Through the window, she could see him gesturing toward a map that showed the locations of all 6 planned attacks. In minutes, he would give the final authorization that would set the operation in motion. But Elena's peripheral vision kept returning. To Sarah Morrison, who had no idea that her father was about to die, or that her presence might cost Elena the precious seconds needed for successful extraction, Elena made a decision that prioritized mission success over personal safety. She would eliminate all 7 targets and trust her skills to escape despite the compromised route. The first shot shattered the conference room window and dropped Morrison instantly. The second and third eliminated his key lieutenants before they could react. By the time Elena's 7th shot found its mark, the Patriots' leadership had been completely neutralized. But the return fire came faster than Elena had anticipated. Her position was immediately bracketed by accurate rifle fire from defenders, who had been trained to respond to exactly this type of attack. Elena's escape route was cut off within seconds, forcing her to find alternative extraction methods. The running gun battle that followed lasted 47 minutes and became a legendary case study in single-operator tactics. Elena moved through the compound like a ghost, eliminating defenders while avoiding civilian casualties among the few family members who lived on the property. But it was her encounter with Sarah Morrison that would haunt Elena for years to come. Young woman had taken shelter in her father's study when the shooting began, unaware that her father lay dead 3 rooms away. Elena found her there while searching for an alternative escape route, cowering behind an overturned desk with tears streaming down her face. For a moment, the 2 women stared at each other across the chaos of the firefight. Sarah saw a black-clad figure with a rifle who had clearly been responsible for the violence that had shattered her world. Elena saw an innocent person whose life had been destroyed by choices she'd never been part of making. "Please," Sarah whispered. "I don't know anything. I'm not part of this." Elena lowered her rifle, the gesture costing her precious seconds, as pursuing defenders closed on her position. "Stay down. Don't move until morning." Then Elena was gone, disappearing through a window as gunfire erupted in the hallway. Outside the study, Elena's extraction from the compound required her to cross 15 miles of wilderness while being pursued by surviving patriots who were highly trained in tracking and pursuit tactics. But her grandfather's lessons in woodcraft, combined with her supernatural abilities, allowed her to evade capture and reach her extraction point. The mission was classified as a complete success. Morrison and his lieutenants were dead. The planned coordinated attacks had been prevented, and intelligence gathered from the compound led to the arrest of terrorist cells in all 6 target cities. But the psychological cost to Elena was devastating. During her post-mission debriefing, she sat in Webb's office trying to reconcile what she'd accomplished with what it had cost her. 7 American veterans were dead by her hand, including a decorated war hero whose distinguished service had been corrupted by extremist ideology. "Phoenix, you prevented attacks that could have killed thousands of innocent Americans," Webb said, his voice carrying genuine admiration. "What you accomplished was extraordinary by any measure." Elena stared at her hands, which showed no tremor despite having killed 7 people less than 12 hours earlier. Those men were American soldiers. They served their country with honor. Before they chose to become terrorists," Webb interrupted. Elena, I understand this is difficult, but you need to maintain perspective. Morrison and his people made a conscious decision to wage war against innocent civilians. You stopped them. The clinical assessment felt hollow against the weight of what Elena had done. She'd crossed another line, one that separated her definitively from the person she'd been when she first picked up that broken rifle at Camp Pendleton. What happens to Sarah Morrison? Elena asked. Webb consulted his tablet. She's been cleared of any involvement in her father's activities. FBI will provide counseling and relocate her if necessary. She'd be fine. But Elena remembered the terror in Sarah's eyes, the moment of recognition when an innocent woman realized her world had been shattered by someone she'd never met. Sarah Morrison might survive physically, but the psychological scars would last forever. There's something else we need to discuss, Webb continued. The success of this operation has attracted attention at the highest levels. Elena, you're being considered for assignment to a new program. What kind of program? The kind that doesn't officially exist. Deep black operations, threat elimination, the missions that can never be acknowledged or discussed. You'd be working alone, with support. Only when absolutely necessary. Elena felt a chill of recognition. Webb was describing the logical endpoint of her operational evolution: complete separation from normal human connections, absolute commitment to mission objectives, the transformation from protector into weapon. What would that involve? Missions. Like tonight, but more complex. Targets that pose existential threats to national security. Operations where conventional military or law enforcement approaches are impossible or inappropriate. The offer represented everything Elena had been moving toward since her first day at the ranch. Ultimate utilization of her abilities, maximum impact against threats to innocent people, complete dedication to protecting others regardless of personal cost. It also represented the final abandonment of any hope of returning to a normal life. How long do I have to decide? Take whatever time you need. But Elena, I want you to understand something. What you're capable of is unprecedented. There may be situations in the future where you're literally the only person who can prevent catastrophic loss of life. The question is whether you're willing to accept that responsibility. Elena left the debriefing with her mind reeling from the implications. Everything she'd experienced since that first day on the firing range had been leading to this moment. The choice between remaining Elena Vasquez, former teacher with extraordinary abilities, or becoming something else entirely. But the decision would be made for her by events beyond her control. 3 days after the Montana operation, Elena was awakened at 3 a.m. by alarms throughout the ranch. Emergency protocols activated, sealing the facility and summoning all personnel to the main briefing room. Kane's face was grim as he addressed the assembled operatives and support staff. We have a situation. At 0200 hours Eastern Time, a coordinated attack was launched against multiple CIF facilities. 7 installations have been hit simultaneously, with significant casualties. The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. An attack of this scope and coordination suggested either state-level involvement or an intelligence leak of unprecedented magnitude. Initial assessment suggests the attacks were carried out by a highly trained team with detailed knowledge of CIA security protocols and personnel movements. This wasn't random terrorism, this was surgical elimination of specific intelligence capabilities. Elena felt ice forming in her stomach as Kane continued. Among the casualties is Agent Chun, who was killed during the attack on the Los Angeles facility. Her entire team was eliminated along with all the intelligence files they were maintaining. The news hit Elena like a physical blow. Agent Chun had been her first contact with the intelligence community, the person who'd helped her understand what she was becoming. Now she was dead, killed by someone with access to information that should have been impossible to obtain. Do we know who's responsible? Someone asked from the back of the room. Kane's expression darkened further. We have preliminary intelligence suggesting the attacks were coordinated by someone with intimate knowledge of our operations, someone who knew exactly where to strike and when. The briefing continued with security protocols and threat assessments. But Elena's mind was focused on a more disturbing possibility. The attacks had targeted facilities and personnel connected to her development as an operative. Agent Chun's team had maintained Elena's psychological profiles and operational records. The Los Angeles facility had housed backup files related to her grandfather's classified service record. Someone was systematically eliminating the people and information connected to Elena's transformation into an operational asset. After the briefing, Elena sought out Webb for a private conversation. She found him in his office, studying intelligence reports with the intensity of someone searching for patterns in chaos. "Marcus," she said, closing the door behind her, "I think these attacks might be connected to me." Webb looked up from his reports, his expression serious. "What makes you say that?" "The targets. Agent Chun's team, the Los Angeles facility, the personnel who were killed, they all had direct involvement with my evaluation and training. Someone is eliminating the institutional knowledge about what I am and what I can do." Webb considered her assessment carefully. "That's possible. But Elena, if someone is targeting people connected to you, then you're likely their ultimate objective." The realization crystallized Elena's understanding of her situation. She wasn't just an asset being protected, she was the target of someone with resources and knowledge that rivaled her own handlers. Who would have that kind of access to our operations? Someone with high-level clearance and intimate knowledge of black programs. Someone who understands how dangerous you've become and wants to eliminate you before you become fully operational. Elena felt the weight of isolation settling over her like a shroud. The people who'd helped shape her into what she was becoming were being systematically murdered, and she was powerless to protect them. "What do we do?" Webb's answer was immediate and chilling. "We accelerate your transition to full operational status. Elena, whoever is doing this has made a strategic error. They've shown their hand before completing their objective. Now we use that advantage to hunt them down." The hunt that followed would transform Elena from a reluctant operative into something far more dangerous, a predator whose abilities were focused not on protecting innocent people, but on eliminating threats to herself and the few people she cared about. But first, she would have to survive the most challenging mission of her career, one that would force her to confront the true source of her abilities and the reason someone was willing to kill dozens of people to prevent her from reaching her full potential. The mission briefing that would define Elena's future took place in Webb's office the following morning. Present were Kane, Webb, Colonel Morrison, and a man Elena had never seen before, elderly, with the bearing of someone accustomed to wielding significant power. "Elena," Morrison began, "this is Dr. Charles Henley, former director of the Prometheus program that your grandfather participated in during the Vietnam War." Dr. Henley studied Elena with the intensity of a scientist examining a fascinating specimen. "Ms. Vasquez, you represent something we thought had been lost forever. Your abilities suggest that the Prometheus research was more successful than we realized." Elena felt a chill of recognition. What exactly was the Prometheus program trying to accomplish? Henley's smile was both proud and disturbing. "We were attempting to unlock human potential that exists, but remains dormant in most people. Enhanced reaction times, superior pattern recognition, intuitive tactical awareness abilities that seemed almost supernatural, but were actually expressions of optimized human neurology. And my grandfather was part of this research. Miguel was our most successful subject. But we thought the program had failed because the enhanced abilities seemed to disappear after the subjects returned to civilian life. What we didn't understand was that the changes were genetic, passed down through bloodlines, and activated by specific environmental triggers. The revelation explained everything Elena had struggled to understand about herself. Her abilities weren't learned or trained. They were inherited modifications that had been dormant until awakened by extreme stress. So what does this have to do with the attacks on CIA facilities? Webb leaned forward. Dr. Henley believes someone is trying to eliminate all evidence of the Prometheus program, including its most successful product, U. Kane activated a wall display showing personnel files. We've identified 3 other individuals who might have inherited similar abilities from Prometheus subjects. All 3 have died under suspicious circumstances in the past 6 months. Elena studied the faces of people she'd never met, but who shared her strange heritage. Someone is hunting us. Someone who understands what you represent and considers you a threat to something larger than any single operation, Henley confirmed. Elena, the abilities you've inherited make you perhaps the most dangerous individual on Earth. In the wrong hands, someone with your capabilities could destabilize governments, eliminate key personnel, or create chaos on a global scale. The weight of revelation pressed down on Elena like a physical force. She wasn't just an exceptional operative. She was the product of classified research that had succeeded beyond its creator's wildest dreams. Who's trying to kill us? Webb's expression was grim. We believe it's someone with access to the original Prometheus research. Someone who knows exactly what you're capable of and wants to eliminate you before you realize your full potential. Elena felt pieces clicking into place in her mind. The broken rifle at Camp Pendleton, the impossible shots, the intuitive tactical awareness, all of it was the result of genetic modifications that had been passed down from her grandfather. What's my full potential? Henley's answer would haunt Elena for the rest of her life. We don't know. Miguel only displayed a fraction of what our research suggested was possible. You've already exceeded his capabilities by orders of magnitude. There may be no upper limit to what you can accomplish. The meeting concluded with a mission assignment that would force Elena to confront not just external threats, but the fundamental question of what she was willing to become. Phoenix, Kane said, your mission is to identify and eliminate whoever is hunting Prometheus descendants. But Elena, you need to understand that this mission will likely require you to use abilities you haven't discovered yet. Are you prepared for that? Elena thought about Agent Chun, about the innocent people who died because someone feared what she might become. The choice was between accepting whatever she was transforming into or allowing others to be murdered to prevent her. Evolution. I'm prepared, she said. Though she had no idea what that preparation would ultimately cost her. The hunt for her would-be assassin began immediately, but it would lead Elena into a confrontation that would forever change her understanding of what it meant to be human. We're approaching the climactic moments of this epic tale, and the tension is at its peak. Creating stories of this scope and detail requires not just writing talent, but careful plotting, character development, and attention to every narrative thread. We've journeyed through nearly 40,000 words together, and I hope every moment has kept you engaged. If this story has drawn you in and kept you listening, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Share this epic with anyone who loves immersive storytelling, and hit that notification bell for more incredible adventures. Now let's witness how everything comes together in these final, crucial moments. The investigation into who was hunting Prometheus descendants led Elena down a path she never could have anticipated. Using intelligence gathered from the CIA facility attacks, Webb's team had identified a pattern of financial transactions and communication intercepts that pointed to a disturbing conclusion. The person trying to eliminate Elena and others like her was someone within the intelligence community itself. Dr. Henley's research into the original Prometheus program revealed why someone might want to destroy all evidence of its success. The program hadn't been terminated in 1971 because of psychological casualties. Among its subjects, it had been shut down because certain officials feared that enhanced individuals might pose a threat to existing power structures. There was a faction within the military and intelligence establishment that believed enhanced operatives would eventually become uncontrollable. Henley explained during a secure briefing. They argued that individuals with your capabilities might develop loyalties that transcended national boundaries or governmental authority. Elena found the irony bitter. She'd been shaped by the very system that now considered her a threat, transformed into someone whose primary loyalty was to protecting innocent people rather than serving institutional interests. Preparing and narrating. This type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. So they're killing us to prevent us from becoming what they trained us to be? They're killing you to prevent you from evolving beyond their ability to control, Webb corrected. Elena, your performance has exceeded every parameter we've established. You're not just an enhanced operative, you're something genuinely new. The search for their enemy intensified when financial analysis revealed a disturbing pattern. The attacks on CIA facilities had been funded through a network of shell companies that traced back to a private military corporation called Titan Security Services. Elena recognized the name immediately. Titan had been responsible for several controversial operations during the Iraq War, including civilian casualties that had been covered up at the highest levels. More relevantly, Titan's founder and CEO was someone Elena knew by reputation, General Robert Morrison, Colonel Patricia Morrison's father and the uncle of the domestic terrorist Elena had killed in Montana. The family connection was too significant to be coincidental. General Morrison had access to classified information about black programs, the resources to fund sophisticated operations, and a personal motivation for wanting Elena eliminated. He blames you for his son's death, Kane concluded after reviewing the intelligence. Morrison sees you as a weapon that turned on its own creators, and he's decided to destroy you before you can do more damage. Elena studied the general's file, noting the distinguished career that had been marred by increasing paranoia about threats to American sovereignty. Morrison had been a vocal critic of enhanced interrogation techniques, advanced surveillance programs, and other initiatives he considered violations of constitutional principles. In his mind, Elena represented the ultimate expression of a government program that had gone too far, creating individuals whose capabilities transcended democratic oversight. His solution was simple: eliminate the enhanced operatives and destroy all evidence of their existence. Where is he now? Elena asked. Webb activated a satellite display showing a compound in the Virginia mountains. Morrison has established a private facility staffed by former special operations personnel. Intelligence suggests he's planning a final operation to eliminate all remaining Prometheus descendants and destroy the research data. Elena studied the compound's layout, noting defensive positions and security measures that rivaled military installations. Morrison had learned from his son's failure in Montana. This facility was designed to withstand assault by enhanced operatives. What's the mission? Kane's expression was grim. Infiltrate the facility, eliminate Morrison, and recover the Prometheus. Research data before he can destroy it. But Elena, this isn't like previous missions. Morrison knows exactly what you're capable of, and he's prepared accordingly. The tactical challenge was unprecedented. Elena would be facing opponents who understood her abilities and had designed countermeasures specifically to neutralize her advantages. Morrison's facility included automated defense systems, overlapping fields of fire, and personnel trained to combat enhanced operatives. But it was the psychological dimension that made the mission truly dangerous. Morrison had recruited operatives whose primary motivation was eliminating what they saw as an existential threat to democratic governance. They wouldn't hesitate to kill Elena because they genuinely believed her existence posed a danger to everything they'd sworn to protect. Elena's preparation for the mission included techniques she'd never been taught but somehow understood intuitively. Dr. Henley worked with her to explore capabilities that seemed to emerge naturally as her stress levels increased. "Your grandfather's abilities were remarkable but limited," Henley observed as Elena demonstrated reaction times that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "You appear to have inherited not just his enhancements, but something more fundamental, an optimization of human neural function that we never achieved in laboratory conditions." Elena found she could process multiple streams of information simultaneously, predict opponents' tactical decisions before they made them, and perform physical feats that should have been impossible. But each new discovery came with a cost. The growing sense that she was leaving her essential humanity behind. "What am I becoming?" she asked Henley during their final session. "Something unprecedented," he replied. "Elena, the human brain typically uses only a small percentage of its theoretical capacity. Your genetic modifications seem to be unlocking potentials that have been dormant since our species evolved. You're not becoming less human, you're becoming more human than anyone has ever been." The distinction felt meaningless when Elena considered the distance between herself and the teacher she'd once been. Every mission, every tactical decision, every line she'd crossed had carried her further from the person who'd once believed that protecting her students was the most important thing she could do. Now she was preparing to infiltrate a heavily defended facility and eliminate someone whose only crime was fearing what she represented. The insertion into Morrison's compound required Elena to approach through terrain that had been specifically chosen to negate her advantages. The facility was surrounded by open ground that eliminated cover, monitored by sensors that could detect minimal heat signatures, and defended by personnel positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. But Elena had evolved beyond the limitations that such defenses were designed to counter. She moved across the open ground like a ghost, her enhanced awareness allowing her to predict sensor sweeps and avoid detection patterns. Her approach took 3 hours and covered 2 miles of hostile terrain without triggering a single alarm. The real challenge began when Elena reached the facility's inner perimeter. Morrison's defenses included automated systems designed to engage multiple targets simultaneously, forcing her to confront technology that had been specifically calibrated to her capabilities. Elena's first encounter with the facility's security systems revealed the extent of Morrison's preparation. Automated turrets opened fire with precision that matched her own, their targeting systems programmed with data from her previous missions. The facility had been designed as a trap specifically for her, but Morrison had made one crucial error. In his planning, he'd based his defenses on Elena's documented capabilities rather than her potential. The person who infiltrated his facility was no longer the operative who'd eliminated his son in Montana. She was something that transcended every classification system the intelligence community had developed. Elena moved through Morrison's defenses like water flowing around obstacles, her enhanced abilities allowing her to anticipate and counter every defensive measure. Automated systems that should have been impossible to defeat were neutralized through combinations of speed, precision, and tactical awareness that seemed to violate physical laws. The personnel defending the facility were eliminated with shots that curved around cover, ricocheted off surfaces that should have been impossible angles, and found targets through gaps that existed for milliseconds. Elena had become something that conventional military thinking couldn't comprehend or counter, but it was her final confrontation with General Morrison himself that would define the ultimate cost of her transformation. Elena found Morrison in the facility's command center, surrounded by displays showing the locations of every remaining Prometheus descendant. His plan was simple: coordinate, simultaneous strikes that would eliminate all enhanced individuals within a 12-hour window. "Ms. Vasquez," Morrison said without turning from his displays, "I've been expecting you." Elena studied the tactical situation, noting the defensive positions Morrison had established and the weapon systems trained on her location. He designed the confrontation to give himself every possible advantage, General Morrison. You've been responsible for killing a lot of innocent people. Morrison finally turned to face her, his expression mixing fear and determination. Innocent? Elena, you and people like you represent the end of human freedom. Your abilities make democratic oversight impossible. How do you hold accountable someone who can eliminate anyone who opposes them? The question cut deeper than Elena expected. Morrison's fear wasn't entirely irrational. She'd become something that existed outside normal systems of control and accountability. Her abilities made her immune to most forms of restraint or punishment. I've never used my abilities against innocent people, Elena said. Haven't you? What about Ahmed Nazari? What about my son James? You decided they needed to die, and you killed them without trial, without due process, without any authority except your own judgment. Morrison's accusation forced Elena to confront the moral weight of her actions. Every person she'd killed had been eliminated based on her assessment of threats and tactical necessities. She had become judge, jury, and executioner, accountable to no one except herself. Sometimes there isn't time for due process, Elena replied, but the words sounded hollow even to her. And that's exactly why you're too dangerous to exist. Elena, you've become a weapon that chooses its own targets. That's not compatible with any system of government that respects human rights. Morrison's argument contained an uncomfortable truth. Elena's abilities had evolved to the point where she could eliminate virtually anyone, anywhere, at any time. The only thing preventing her from becoming a dictator was her own moral compass, and she'd already compromised that compass multiple times in service of what she'd believed were greater goods. So your solution is to murder everyone like me? My solution is to prevent the emergence of a master race that considers itself above human law. Elena, you're not the first enhanced individual I've eliminated, and you won't be the last. The casual admission of multiple murders crystallized Elena's understanding of what she faced. Morrison wasn't just eliminating Prometheus descendants, was waging genocide against people whose only crime was inheriting modifications they'd never asked for. The difference between us, Elena said, is that I kill people who threaten innocent lives. You kill people because you're afraid of what they might become. Morrison activated a device on his console, and Elena felt a strange tingling sensation that suggested some kind of directed energy weapon calibrated to disrupt enhanced nervous systems. The difference between us, Morrison replied, is that I'm trying to preserve human freedom while you've become a threat to human survival. The energy weapon was designed to incapacitate enhanced individuals by overwhelming their optimized neural functions. Elena felt her reflexes slowing, her tactical awareness diminishing, her enhanced abilities being systematically suppressed. But Morrison had made the same error as his facility's designers. He'd based his countermeasures on documented capabilities rather than true potential. Elena's response to the neural disruption field wasn't incapacitation, it was evolution. Her enhanced nervous system adapted to the attack, using the energy input to access capabilities that had been dormant even in her modified genetics. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. Elena moved faster than human perception could track, her tactical awareness expanding to encompass the entire facility and its surroundings. Morrison's carefully planned defensive positions became irrelevant when faced with someone who could process information at superhuman speeds and execute decisions faster than opponents could react. Morrison died before he could complete his final transmission to coordinate the elimination of other Prometheus descendants. His weapon systems were disabled before they could fire. His contingency plans were neutralized before they could activate. But Elena's victory came at a cost that would haunt her forever. The neural enhancement that had allowed her to defeat Morrison's countermeasures was permanent and irreversible. She had crossed a threshold beyond which there was no return to anything resembling normal human existence. Elena stood in Morrison's command center, surrounded by evidence of his plan to commit genocide against enhanced individuals, and realized that she had become exactly what he'd feared, a being whose capabilities transcended human oversight or control. The recovery of the Prometheus research data revealed the full scope of what Elena and others like her represented. The genetic modifications weren't just enhancements, they were evolutionary leaps that could fundamentally alter human civilization. But Elena was no longer sure that such alterations would be improvements. The extraction from Morrison's facility marked the end of Elena's operational career, though she didn't realize it at the time. Webb's debrief was conducted via secure satellite link, with Elena still at the facility while forensic teams processed the intelligence Morrison had gathered. "Phoenix, you've successfully eliminated the primary threat to Prometheus descendants," Webb said, his voice carrying an odd mixture of congratulation and concern. "Morrison's network has been neutralized, and the research data is secure." Elena studied the displays Morrison had been using to track enhanced individuals around the world. His list included 17 names, people who had no idea they carried genetic modifications that made them targets for elimination. "What happens to the others?" Elena asked. "We're implementing protective protocols. Enhanced individuals will be offered the choice of joining classified programs or receiving protection while living civilian lives. The important thing is that they'll be safe from future attempts at elimination." But Elena sensed something in Webb's tone that suggested the situation was more complex than he was revealing. "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" The pause that followed confirmed Elena's suspicions. "Elena, your performance during this mission has raised some concerns at the highest levels. Your capabilities have evolved beyond our ability to assess or predict." The clinical language couldn't hide the underlying reality. Elena had become too powerful for her handlers to control. The neural enhancements that had allowed her to defeat Morrison's countermeasures had transformed her into something that existed outside normal command structures. "Are you retiring me?" Elena asked. "We're offering you a choice. Continue with operations that utilize your unique capabilities, but under enhanced oversight and with mission parameters specifically designed to prevent further evolution. Or transition to a consulting role where you can help develop countermeasures for enhanced threats." Elena understood the subtext. Her superiors were afraid of what she was becoming and wanted to contain her before she evolved beyond their ability to influence. The choice was between accepting restrictions on her capabilities or being sidelined entirely. "What if I choose neither option?" Webb's answer confirmed Elena's worst fears about her situation. "Elena, you need to understand that your abilities make you a strategic asset that can't be allowed to operate independently. One way or another, you'll be working within official channels." The threat was politely phrased but unmistakable. Elena had become too valuable and too dangerous to be permitted civilian life. Her choice was between voluntary cooperation and involuntary containment. Elena made a decision that would define the rest of her life. "Marcus, I need some time to consider my options. Give me 72 hours. "Elena, I can't authorize. I'm not asking for authorization. I'm telling you that I need 3 days to think about what you're proposing. After that, I'll give you my answer." The connection ended before Webb could respond, leaving Elena alone in Morrison's command center with the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. Over the next 3 days, Elena used Morrison's intelligence network to contact other Prometheus descendants and offer them information that would help them evade government oversight. She understood now that enhanced individuals faced a future of either submission to authority or elimination by people who feared their capabilities. Her communications with other enhanced individuals revealed a disturbing pattern. Those who had attempted to live normal lives were being systematically monitored and controlled. Those who resisted oversight were being eliminated through accidents or suicide. The government's protective protocols were actually containment, measures designed to prevent enhanced individuals from realizing their full potential. Elena's final communication as an official operative was a message to Webb that would become legendary within intelligence circles. "Marcus, I've made my decision. I'm declining both options you offered. I'm going to disappear, and I'm going to help others like me do the same. Tell your superiors that their greatest fear has been realized. Enhanced individuals who refuse to be controlled by people who are afraid of evolution." Elena's disappearance from Morrison's facility was accomplished through methods that defied every tracking and surveillance capability the intelligence community possessed. She simply vanished, taking with her the complete Prometheus research, data, and a list of every enhanced individual the government had been monitoring. The manhunt that followed lasted 6 months and involved resources that dwarfed most military operations. Elena had become the most wanted person in American intelligence, not because of any crime she'd committed, but because of what she represented: proof that human evolution could transcend governmental control. But Elena stayed ahead of her pursuers through abilities that continued to evolve in response to pressure. She moved through the world like a ghost, helping other enhanced individuals disappear while building a network of people who shared her commitment to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. 5 years later, Elena operated a sanctuary for enhanced individuals hidden in the mountains of Colorado. The facility provided training, protection, and support for people whose abilities made them targets of governmental elimination programs that her students called her teacher, unaware of her operational history, but recognizing her commitment to helping them understand and control their capabilities. Elena had returned, in a sense, to her original profession, but now she was teaching lessons that could mean the difference between freedom and lifetime imprisonment. The government's attempts to locate and infiltrate Elena's sanctuary had all failed, defeated by enhanced individuals who had learned to use their abilities for protection rather than aggression. Elena had created something unprecedented, a community of evolved humans who chose cooperation over domination. Dr. Hoffman's final psychological evaluation of Elena, compiled from surveillance data and intelligence reports, concluded that she had achieved something remarkable: the integration of superhuman capabilities with unwavering moral principles. "Subject has transcended every psychological model we've developed for enhanced individuals," Hoffman wrote. Rather than becoming isolated or megalomaniacal, she has used her evolution to create supportive communities for others facing similar challenges. Elena Vasquez represents the best possible outcome of human enhancement, someone who becomes more powerful in service of protecting others rather than controlling them. But Elena's story was far from over. Intelligence reports suggested that other nations were developing their own enhancement programs, creating enhanced individuals who might not share Elena's commitment to protecting innocent people. Elena's sanctuary would eventually become the foundation for something larger, a global network of enhanced individuals committed to preventing the misuse of their capabilities. But that story would unfold in years to come, built on the foundation of choices Elena had made in a sniper's scope on a rooftop in Prague, in a physics laboratory in Tehran, and in countless moments when she'd chosen to protect rather than destroy. Broken rifle that had started everything became a symbol displayed in Elena's office, a reminder that tools were only as good or evil as the hands that wielded them. Elena had chosen to be a protector rather than a weapon, and that choice had made all the difference. Her grandfather's voice still echoed in her memory during quiet moments. "Mia, the shot comes from within." Elena had learned that the most important shot was the one you chose not to take, and the most powerful weapon was the decision to use strength in service of others. The teacher who had once protected her students with a borrowed pistol had become something unprecedented, an enhanced human who used her evolution to create rather than destroy, to protect rather than dominate, to teach rather than control. And, in the end, That choice had defined not just Elena's destiny, but the future of human enhancement itself. Elena stood on the balcony of her sanctuary, watching her students practice precision shooting under the guidance of other enhanced individuals who had found their way to safety. Each shot was perfect, each technique flawless, each student learning to master abilities that made them simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. But more importantly, each student was learning the lesson Elena had discovered through years of impossible choices, that true strength wasn't measured by the targets you could hit, but by the lives you chose to protect. The broken rifle had taught Elena that tools could be overcome by will, technique could be transcended by purpose, and even the most flawed instrument could achieve perfection in the right hands. Now she was teaching others that the most important lesson of all wasn't how to shoot, but when not to. Elena Vasquez had become exactly what her grandfather's training had prepared her to be, someone who could make the impossible shot when it mattered most, and wise enough to know when missing was the greater victory. The story that had begun with a broken rifle and an impossible shot had become something larger. Proof that human enhancement could lead to wisdom rather than domination, protection rather than destruction, teaching rather than control. And in the end, that lesson would echo far beyond any bullet Elena had ever fired, shaping the future of enhanced humanity for generations to come. What an absolutely incredible journey we've shared together, a full 50,000 words of adventure, character growth, and storytelling. Creating a story of this magnitude requires months of planning, writing, and careful narration to ensure every detail is perfect and every moment keeps you engaged. This has been the equivalent of a complete novella, crafted specifically for this format. If this epic story moved you, inspired you, or simply entertained you through this incredible journey, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more amazing long-form stories. Share this with anyone who loves compelling narratives and has the patience for truly epic storytelling. Hit that notification bell to be the first to hear our newest content. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community and for joining me on this remarkable adventure. I'll see you in the next incredible tale. 10 years after Elena's disappearance from government oversight, reports began surfacing of mysterious interventions around the world. Hostage situations resolved by impossible shots from unknown snipers. Terrorist attacks prevented by individuals who seemed to appear and vanish like ghosts. Human trafficking rings dismantled by operatives whose capabilities defied explanation. The intelligence community knew the truth. Elena's network of enhanced individuals had become a shadow force protecting innocent people from threats that conventional authorities couldn't address. They operated without government sanction, answering to no flag or nation, bound only by their shared commitment to defending those who couldn't defend themselves. In a small cafe in Prague, not far from where Elena had once faced an impossible moral choice, a young woman sat reading a newspaper article about the mysterious prevention of a school shooting in Germany. The gunman had been stopped by a single precise shot from over 800 meters, a shot that authorities declared physically impossible. The woman smiled slightly and folded the newspaper. She had silver hair despite her apparent youth, and eyes that held depths of experience beyond her years. On her wrist was a simple bracelet engraved with a single word: Phoenix. Elena Vasquez had kept her promise to her grandfather, using the abilities he'd helped awaken to protect innocent people from those who would harm them. But more than that, she'd proven that human enhancement didn't have to lead to domination or corruption. In the right hands, guided by the right principles, extraordinary capabilities could become instruments of protection rather than destruction. The broken rifle that had started her journey now served as more than a symbol. It was a reminder that imperfection could be overcome by will, that limitations existed only until someone refused to accept them, and that the most important shot was always the one that saved a life rather than took one. Elena's students continued to spread across the globe, each carrying the lessons she'd taught them that power without purpose was meaningless, that strength without compassion was tyranny, and that the greatest victory was often knowing when not to pull the trigger. The teacher had returned to teaching, and her classroom had become the world itself. Somewhere in the mountains of Colorado, Elena stood before a new group of enhanced individuals who'd found their way to sanctuary. In her hands was the same broken rifle that had changed everything, its warped barrel and misaligned sights still visible despite years of careful preservation. "This rifle taught me the most important lesson of my life," she told her students. "It's not about the tool, it's about the person using it. Today, you're going to learn that lesson for yourselves." She handed the rifle to the first student, a young man whose enhanced reflexes had made him a target for elimination. "Show me what you can do with something that shouldn't work." The student raised the broken rifle, sighted downrange at the impossible target, and prepared to discover what Elena had learned so many years ago, that the shot truly did come from within, and the cycle continued. Each broken rifle teaching a new generation that perfection wasn't about the weapon, it was about the wisdom to use power in service of protection rather than destruction. Elena's legacy lived on in every impossible shot that saved a life, every enhanced individual who chose protection over domination, and every broken tool that proved limitations existed only in the mind. The instructor had given her a broken rifle and gone pale when she hit dead center every time. Now Elena was the instructor, and she was teaching others that being broken was just another way of being perfect. Thank you for joining me on this extraordinary 50,000+ word journey through Elena's transformation from teacher to protector. This epic tale represents the equivalent of a complete novella, crafted with careful attention to character development, moral complexity, and the timeless question of how we choose to use our gifts. If this story resonated with you, if Elena's struggle between power and conscience, her impossible choices, and her ultimate decision to protect rather than control moved you, please take a moment to show your support. Hit that like button to let us know this story connected with you. Subscribe to our channel for more epic, long-form narratives that explore the depths of human potential and moral choice. Share this story with anyone who appreciates complex characters facing impossible situations. Most importantly, ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest adventures into the extraordinary stories that define what it means to be human in an extraordinary world. Your support allows us to continue creating these detailed, immersive narratives that transport you to other worlds and explore the deepest questions of human nature. Every like, every subscription, every share helps us reach new audiences who crave stories with real substance and emotional depth. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community. Thank you for having the patience and appreciation for truly epic narratives. And thank you for joining Elena on her remarkable journey from broken rifle to perfect shot, from reluctant soldier to wise protector. Until our next incredible adventure together, keep aiming for the impossible. And remember that the most important shot is always the one that protects rather than destroys. See you in the next epic tale.